The implementation deadline for the entry-level driver training regulation is fast approaching. February 7th is the drop-dead date on determining if a new applicant driver must adhere to these rules or not. If there is someone that wants or needs a CDL in your organization, they should get a commercial learner's permit prior to February 7th. And these rules do not apply to them as long as they obtain their CDL before that learner's permit expires. During this brief video, we'll attempt to explain the very basics of this rule and answer the most common question we've been receiving from small and medium-sized organizations. And that question is, what should we do? So first off, let's dive right in and talk about what exactly is entry-level driver training, or ELDT as we'll refer to it for the rest of this video. These requirements are in place for anyone wishing to obtain a Class A or Class B CDL. It also applies to anyone wishing to upgrade their Class B to a Class A. The other things that this rule applies to is any driver wishing to get endorsements for hazardous materials, passenger vehicles, or school bus. ELDT consists of two types of training from an authorized training provider. The training has two separate parts. One consists of theory or classroom style training, and the other is behind the wheel training, where the learner or applicant is driving the vehicle that they wish to pursue the license for. Let's first talk about theory training. ELDT rule for theory training is essentially spelling out what it takes to be a safe commercial driver. This may be completed in a classroom setting, it might be computer-based, or by some other online learning platform. During the theory portion of the class, a driving simulator may be used to enhance learning retention. Some of the topics that are required to be covered during theory include basic operation, safe operating procedures, advanced operation procedures, vehicle systems and reporting malfunctions, and non-driving activities. There is no requirement on how long this portion of the training should last, rather only that the material is fully covered. It also establishes a minimum assessment score of 80% that the trainee must obtain over the theory training. The rules are very clear in laying out exactly what material must be covered during this portion of the training. Now that we've covered the very basics of the theory training, let's talk more about the driving part of the ELDT rule. During the driving portion of the ELDT rule, this can be met by a trainee operating the commercial motor vehicle on a range or on a public roadway with a qualified trainer in the cab. It's important to note that a driving simulator cannot be used as a substitute for driving training. Again, there is no requirement for a specific number of hours to operate the CMV, but only enough to adequately determine the driver's proficiency in basic vehicle control skills and mastery over basic maneuvers. Now that we've covered the very basics of the training requirements, let's talk about what the training provider registry is and does. The training provider registry can really be broken down into three parts: what the requirements of a training provider are, who's qualified to be a training provider, and registering within the TPR system. The requirements of an ELDT training provider are best summarized as one that follows and adheres to the curriculum described in the rule, one that utilizes facilities and vehicles according to the regulation, ensures their instructors meet the requirements, and they must allow FMCSA auditors access to the training when they request it. The last requirement of a training provider is that they must be able to electronically submit data for trainees to the TPR website. Pretty simple. Now let's discuss what qualifies a trainer. That is actually quite simple. A qualified trainer is someone that has a current CDL of the same or higher class of license and with all endorsements necessary to operate the CMV for which training is to be provided, and has at least 2 years of experience driving a commercial motor vehicle of the same or higher class and or the same endorsement. Lastly, any company wishing to be a training provider must register within the TPR registry on FMCSA's website. The training provider must create an account and self-certify that they meet the requirements and will adhere to the regulations set forth by the rule. Now that we've talked about the requirements of what the rules are, what everyone really wants to know is, now what do we do? This is really the question that everyone wants the answer to. In short, there are really three options. The first and easiest to say is not hire anyone without a CDL they need to do their job. While this is easy for us to recommend, we fully recognize this as being unrealistic. The second option is to send your employee through a training provider that is already listed in the registry. The training providers are listed within an Excel file that can be searched by state and whether or not they provide training outside their own organizations. What they don't list, however, is the cost for that training. The real last viable option is to submit your organization as a training provider to the registry and conduct your own training in-house. We're often asked if this increases your liability. The short answer is no, because you already own the risk associated with commercial truck operations. The one caveat that might have is that you could add some risk if you're simply going through the motions and not actually training these entry-level drivers according to the rules. Although I suspect if those are your plans, there's already the potential for other significant risk. There are quite a few off-the-shelf programs out there that we can point you to for complying with the curriculum requirements of the theory training, as well as outlines and skills assessments for the driving portion. There's no need to try and attempt to create your own from scratch. I'm certain that you may have many more questions about this ELDT regulation. Please don't hesitate to reach out to any of your safety consultants within ProValue or Ag Services. We're here to help navigate this rule with you.